Small studios are destroying the giants of the gaming industry. In 2024 to 2025, the revenue of large AAA publishers declined, and sales of expensive blockbusters no longer justify budgets. Instead, AA projects with limited resources have made it to the top of the sales charts and are winning over audiences with their creativity and honest gameplay. And it's not about the talent of the developers, because those same Ubisoft employees, tired of the conveyor belt of open world crap, founded their own studio and created a AA game that broke the charts and won the love of players. But how did it happen that games made by small studios look and play better from those from well-known companies that have ruled the industry for decades? Why have big publishers lost interest in creating real games while the quote-unquote middle class of game developers have suddenly brought soul back to gaming? And does this mean that the future of the industry is no longer about AAA? It all started with this comment I found under the trailer for a new AA game. Specifically, the phrase, "AA games really rocks." I didn't really understand how low budget video games were related to stones, but a little further down, it was explained that these developers have so little money that it inspires me. Let's start by figuring out what video game classes actually are. We have AAA studios. You can think of them as, let's say Starbucks. For decades, they've been feeding us the same soulless, watered down crap, and every year, they raise their prices. Fuck you, Starbucks. We also have indie developers who are like homeless people who, for a couple of dollars, will give you a real performance that you wouldn't expect from the previous ones. And the main thing here is that what they really do have is soul. And then there's the middle ground, the third class, AA. They're somewhere in the middle, and you can think of them as like the local pizzeria in your neighborhood. Yes, they can make crap, but it won't cost as much as Starbucks. And most importantly, they really do try their best. In fact, this is very evident from the releases that came out this year. Take Hollow Knight Silksong, for example. This is not a game, it's a fucking cultural phenomenon. Two people from Australia made the world wait for years, and when it finally came out, the internet pushed the game to the top of Twitch and Steam. An audience tired of bloated and repetitive AAA projects finally breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone understood one simple thing. You don't need thousands of employees and a blockbuster budget to make something that will go down in history. Silksong looks beautiful, and most importantly, it plays like it was made by the people who really love games. Let's also mention Expedition 33. This is a AA project that was created by former Ubisoft employees. The same people who spent years churning out endless Assassin's Creed games with identical open worlds and copying mechanics from previous Far Cry games. And now these people have left the big company, opened their own small little studio, and made a game that clearly shows that mid-tier game developers can do fucking amazing, incredible goddamn things. How is this game different from what almost all the big studios are doing? First, attention to detail. Where AAA blockbusters try to impress with the scale of a world as empty as a student's refrigerator, Expedition 33 focuses solely on visual aesthetics, intimacy, and style. This isn't a game that wants to show you 50 square kilometers of swamp, but a game that really wants you to remember every location. Second of all, it doesn't feel like assembly line garbage. On the contrary, it's clear that people did what they themselves found interesting. And thirdly, this game proved that AA projects can really make money. Expedition 33 didn't just sell well, it made it to the top of the sales charts alongside titles that corporations spend 10 times more on. Independent teams are not obliged to the demands of investors, shareholders, and market analysts. They can do what players really want to see. And once upon a time, when billions of dollars and stupid managers had not yet entered the industry, everything was completely different. In the 2000s and the 2010s, AAA was synonymous with quality. The larger the scale and the budget of the game, the better it was. Everything was simple and logical. But these crazy budgets made studios hostage to publishers and investors. And that's when the middle class began to form. Not because someone specifically invented AA, but because some of the former giants simply couldn't keep up with the arms race. THQ, with dozens of IPs, went completely bankrupt and suddenly turned into a AA publisher. Midway, which once held the arcade industry, fell and sold Mortal Kombat to Warner. Remedy, which fought Rockstar in equal terms with Max Payne, found itself on the brink of collapse after the failure of Alan Wake, and effectively became a AA studio surviving on contracts. In other words, to simplify for you smooth-brained morons, AA is not the little brother of AAA. These are the ones that flew too high, but managed to survive after the fall. And it is thanks to them that we have this layer of games that do not compete on budgets, but retain their freedom. If AA are those who survive the fall, then AAA have become giants who have forgotten why it all started. And this is where it becomes clear why big studios are losing. In today's world, AAA is a conveyor belt, and every time there is a minimum of innovation and a maximum of recycling of old mechanics. Creativity here is killed by deadlines because the franchise must come out every single year, regardless of whether or not there is anything to say. Creativity here doesn't die from laziness, as is usually presented, but from the structure itself. The longer the development, the more expensive it is to maintain a 1,000-strong team, so management shuts down any ideas that cannot be offset by marketing. Live service models have also distorted the industry, but the problem is not just battle passes. It's a completely different way of thinking. The game has no end. It is created as an endless funnel of attention retention. It's freaking closer to TikTok algorithms than it is to art, and that's why such games feel exhausting even if you pay full prices for them. Franchises have become even more dangerous traps, not because there are so many of them, but simply because they have turned into risk management systems. Creating new IP is too risky. Even when the game is of high quality, the chances of failure is huge. Just think of Returnal or Hi-Fi Rush. Both received rave reviews from critics but failed to generate the necessary sales. And after such stories, large companies would rather invest in a remake or remaster than risk creating a completely new brand. Oh, we should also mention such shit as team hyperinflation. When more than 1,000 people in 10 countries are working on one game, there is no author. Everyone sees only their price of code or design, and the overall vision becomes fucking blurred. And in fact, ironically, it is this limitation in resources, people, and budgets that help the small studios beat big corporations. The paradox here is that AA studios win precisely because of their limitations. It's really ironic, actually. They don't have the budget for a 5-year advertising campaign or dozens of hours of content for streamers. Therefore, the focus shifts to what really works. For example, gameplay and setting. This is best illustrated by the example of A Plague Tale. The game is built as an antithesis of AAA. No open worlds, grinding, repetitive quests, online modes, or unnecessary features for the sake of what developers call content. Everything is reduced to one thing: a tense, linear, deeply directed story. Where large studios measure the quality by the number of hours, A Plague Tale emphasizes the pace, staging, and accuracy of each scene. And this is only possible in the AA format: a shorter development cycle, fewer managers, and more control within the team. As a result, there are no extra levels or artificial stretching. 70 people did what 1,500 people couldn't do at Ubisoft. AA has another advantage too. They can take risks where corporations are afraid to. Take Stray, for example. A big publisher would never have funded a game where you can run after a cat in a cyberpunk city. Of course not. It's too niche. It's too weird for marketers. But it's this weirdness that made the game a huge success. AA doesn't need to convince shareholders that all the players in the world will buy the product. All you really need to do is find your audience, and they will make the game a phenomenon. Another key factor here is direct contact with the community. While AAA studios find themselves holy and more elite than us ordinary people, AA creators have always communicated with their community. Discord servers, forums, open devlogs, all of this helps them hear their audience and beg for money on Kickstarter. Kingdom Come: Deliverance started as a Kickstarter campaign with doubts about its visibility, and today we have a sequel with a substantial budget and the frenzied love of fans. This middle class of game development literally grew up on the support of communities, and for that, the community got the game it wanted. AA game today is like indie rock in the music of the 2000s. Not mainstream, but loud enough to change the rules of the game, and the creators are sitting on heroin. The fear of losing money is stronger than the desire to create. In today's AAA world, any idea that doesn't promise to sell 100 million copies is buried deep in the ground forever. Even if it could be the next Half-Life or even the first Agent. When the cost of the game is higher than NASA's budget, but it still doesn't launch. AAA, on the other hand, works with a completely different vibe. They are not afraid of risk because they simply have nothing to insure it with. AA has absolutely no fear of losing shares, but there is a fear of losing passion. That's why they experiment, test, and make mistakes. It's normal. Their teams are not a large corporate office in the downtown where there's free pizza in the kitchen every Thursday, coffee machine that makes a shit coffee, and two IT guys near the water cooler discussing who from the marketing department they fucked, who are just afraid to say that they fucked each other. AA developers are more like a big noisy pub where 50 people are arguing about who made the more ingenious level. And perhaps it is this anarchy that is saving games today.